Welcome to the Lights Camera Pro podcast, where we interview entertainment pros about their careers and how they became successful in the industry. The secrets to their success here every week. Here's your host, Sean Ventura.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Lights Camera Pro podcast. I'm your host, Sean Ventura, and I just want to say go to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and subscribe, rate, and review. Today's guest is Matthew Foster. He's a good friend of mine who worked on the show Run It Back. He works at Adult Swim, worked on the shows Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and My Pretty Face Goes to Hell. He's got a lot of great stories. Here we go. Matt is a writer-producer for Adult Swim. I'm sure tons of people are interested because people love Adult Swim. And I'll just go right to the first question. So, Matt, how did you know that you wanted to be in the film and TV industry? Like how old were you? Were you watching Adult Swim at 10 years old? Were you watching cartoons? How did you know you wanted to do this?
No, I think I don't think I was somebody who knew from a very early age that I wanted to do film and television. I had a lot of different ideas of what maybe I would do, even halfway through high school. I think probably about sophomore, junior year of high school, I started to get a somewhat of a concrete idea that I didn't know necessarily if I wanted to be in film or TV or where within those industries, but I knew I wanted to write.
Okay.
So that was kind of the first point of a focus for me, and then from there I kind of realized, I loved to read as a kid. So it kind of it went naturally in my head that I would go from reading to writing books until I started to try and write a book, and that was clearly very quickly not my forte.
Right.
I did not like sitting and writing paragraphs of description for environments and tables and chairs and all this shit you have to fill the world with, that good writers just seem to make flow so naturally. I had no interest in that even. I had no knack for that. I had no ability to really do that well, at least not well enough in my opinion.
Right. So you go to college, you're studying film, and what happens then?
Well, I went to Georgia State University here in Atlanta, Georgia, because they paid me to do that. And the film department there, at least at the time, it's weird. It was good, but it wasn't, what's the word? It just wasn't dense enough. It wasn't making film has gotten cheaper, and even at the time that I went to school, so long ago, in 2008 or 7 or whatever, there were things that were very expensive that we just couldn't afford, I guess, as a school. We had one real edit lab bay, but it had a solid number of computers, but I think it was just the resources were so limited that it tended to take a long time to get into the classes and the courses that made the most use out of them, that by the time I probably got into those courses as a junior or senior, I was already halfway out the door.
Right.
Because I started, I think, maybe my third semester, early sophomore year, I think it was when I first started applying to be an intern with Adult Swim, and I just did it every semester to no response. Because they had what happened was they had one of my professors had some former students of hers come in and talk about how they had been interns and what they had done while they were interns and how they had gotten the internships, and I don't think either of them were with Adult Swim, the people that came back to talk to us, but they were with Turner Broadcasting on a whole.
Okay.
With Adult Swim's under that umbrella. And I guess on the other side of it, you feel like it's obvious and simple, but when you're a kid in a city that you've only lived in for, 14 months, trying to do something that you have no idea how to do, and no one that has ever done anything like it before, any piece of information is worth its weight in gold. It's so valuable. So even just someone being like, you should be an intern, I'd be like, a what? That is a great idea.
What's an intern?
You can do that? You just don't know.
Yeah,
I think
you have no idea.
It's easy to forget about how uninformed you can be at a younger age.
Yeah.
So I just got the information from those people, and they told you what website to go to and what to look for and who to email, and because there's an HR person that specializes in internships.
Right.
And I would just every semester, when the new batch come out, spring, summer, fall, just.
And how long did it take you? Was it years or was it a year?
It took years. I think my first. When was I don't remember exactly how many times it was, but 3 or 4, maybe 5 times in a row even, I would apply just to Adult Swim.
Right.
And got no response at all. And then finally I went, okay, well, this is obviously not working. Let me expand and broaden this and try a different approach. And I applied for just different things that seemed interesting, I guess, within the Turner umbrella. And the first time I did that, I didn't get an internship, but I got at least some responses and some feedback, and I got to do some interviews. And the second time I did it, I got an internship with Turner Classic Movies original productions.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that was technically the first, even though I wasn't paid, because it was the last unpaid internship that Turner Broadcasting did. But it was the first thing I did for any professional film, anything.
So what was that like working at TCM?
Honestly, it was pretty great. All the people there were really good. I worked with I think Gary Friedman was his name.
Yeah, I interviewed Gary for the podcast a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So he was my supervisor, and I basically they do this thing where once a month it used to be Robert Osborne until he passed away, but they would bring him in, or sometimes Ben Mankiewicz, and they wrote intros and outros, little 2-5 minute whatever.
Yeah. I worked on them. Guest programmer or essentials or whatever. Yeah.
Yep, they would do those too, and they would, but once a month they would do it for all their films, and I just helped them. That was basically that was the bulk of what I saw, I guess. So I was basically helping them prep for those and shoot those, and eventually I wrote a few of them as well.
Nice.
Towards the end.
So how do you get over to Adult Swim?
So I
mean, literally you could walk across the street, but how do you get over and work?
Well, that actually, that's funny, because it's across the street. I had no idea where it was. I could never figure out where it was. So while I was in Turner Classic Movies, I did always kind of have my eye on, all right, I'm here to try and get to Adult Swim, but I don't know anyone over there, and I don't know where that is even, and I can't seem to figure it out because there's nothing in the building about Adult Swim. It's all that stuff on Techwood's side is, Adult Swim's isolated over on William Street. So I guess towards the latter third of the internship, which when you're in it seems like it's so much time, but when you see it, scores of interns go by a year, they just seem to be gone in an instant. It's very interesting. But towards the back end of the internship, I guess I had I tried to work hard and do a good job and blah blah blah, and I had gotten a decent relationship with Gary, and I asked him, the only thing I ever really asked for, which was, is there any way I can just see it? If I can just go over there and walk around and just see what it's like over there, and maybe meet somebody, just because that's where I want to eventually work.
No, it makes sense.
So is there something I could do? There was a woman at Turner Classic Movies named Millie, who's very, very sweet. and she was good friends. I would assume still is good friends with a few of the people over at Adult Swim, and she was, I guess, as part of like, well, she was like, well, I'll go over there and meet a couple of my friends, and we'll go out to lunch, and I'll take you over there, and I'll introduce you to somebody, and they'll walk you and do a little tour and whatever. So she walked me over there and passed me off to a guy named Eddie Ray, who do you know Eddie?
No, I don't know Eddie.
Okay. He is like the unofficial mascot, I guess, of Adult Swim.
Okay.
He's very, very nice guy. Very peculiar. Very interesting.
Yeah, we're at Adult Swim. Yeah.
But he gave me a tour, introduced me to some people around there, and at the end of it, he was like, "Hey," because I was telling him, I really want to. This is what I want to do. I want to work here. I want to do what you guys do.
Yeah.
I was like, well, yeah, here's my email. When you apply for an internship again, email me.
Nice.
And I guess the interesting thing is that would be the first time that I applied in the fall. Sorry, I applied in that because the Turner Classic Movie one was in the spring, and then I applied for Adult Swim in the fall, which was the first time I got that internship, and it was also the first time they had ever responded to me. So
you got it. Awesome.
I did, obviously, or I probably wouldn't be here talking to you. But it's interesting. A lot of this industry is about who you know in certain ways, but you don't. I think what people assume that means is that you have to be like chums. You have to be buddies with some dude, some executive over at Viacom, or you need to be like, oh, I'm this guy's son, or I'm this person's daughter, or whatever. And it's
I'm the head of Coke's son, or whatever.
You don't have. It doesn't have to be that. You literally just have to be like, hi, my name is Matt. It's nice to meet you. I really want to work here. Okay, well, email me later and I'll see what we can do. It's that simple.
So what was that feeling like? Like, you were very determined. You wanted to be there. So many people want to get in the door there. I won't get into my story, but it took me 9 months to get into Turner. I had an ex-boss that he tried to get in for 20 years, didn't get in. Another guy I knew tried to get in for 20 years, couldn't get in. It's hard to get in both of those buildings. What did it feel like for them to just be like, dude, you're hired?
An extreme level of accomplishment. Which it's kind of silly because I hadn't really accomplished anything.
Right. No, but it is. It's a huge accomplishment because, like you said, so many people want to get in there.
Yeah.
Well, just tell me about My Pretty Face Goes to Hell. So you're working on it. You're helping out in some way. And how do you become a writer for the show? Are they just like, dude, you're just just pestering them? Okay.
I mean, it helps to be funny. I think that was a big thing. You kind of have to. You have weird little unofficial proving ground moments of you kind of have to just prove several things along the way, like, hey, I'm competent, I can work hard and be loyal and dedicated, I've got an eye for something creative, I can be funny. You have to, like, people just have to prove yourself.
So let me ask you a question, because I interviewed this guy, John Viner, who's a writer and voice actor for Family Guy, Cleveland show. And he's on the new show, Duncanville, Amy Poehler's new show. And he said that every day, and he knew Seth through this other guy, Adam, but every day he would go in there and he would have to tell jokes and stand out and like, people were fired. You know what I mean? Like, if you didn't come up with jokes 2 days in a row, you know what I mean? Like, you had to constantly.
Adult Swim is not that same type of environment.
Okay.
Because what I'm imagining, and I'm not sure, I don't know his experience, but what I'm imagining he's talking about is going into a writer's room.
Yes. He's talking about writers' rooms and reading your
usually that's
script.
10 to 12 to 15 people even or more or whatever.
And then they break off into other groups and they have to write scenes. Yeah. But if
there
you
are
don't,
no writers' rooms in
Okay.
like William Street. There are like usually it has been pairs of showrunners that will write together, and then there'll be script reads. But that's the closest that most things get to a writer's room in William Street.
right. But are you writing a scene or an
No, the
entire
whole script.
show? The
Whole
entire
script.
show. Okay. And then
For
you bring
that-
it
in that
in and
instance.
you just start shooting.
What?
You bring in the script and you just start shooting the script?
No. We write. The way we did it was you do an extended outline, which is like just a very heavily broken out outline, several pages long. They give you notes. You revise that. They approve it. You write a draft. Notes. Revise. Notes. Revise. They take it. They revise it. Put it in the way they want to do it. They want to change things. Sometimes they change a lot. Sometimes they change very little. And then it has to go through, at the time it was Mike Lazo's got to approve it. Whoever's in the charge of the creative for the network, they have to approve it. Standards and practices, legal department, blah, blah, blah. And then you got to hand it to a production supervisor, a UPM, and say, hey, how do we shoot this? Sometimes they go, well, you can't shoot that. And so you have to change. Okay, maybe it's at a gymnasium instead of a cathedral or blah, blah, blah. You make little changes and stuff here and there, and then you get to shoot it. But that's a long process.
Very, very cool. So interesting for people who want to do this, and I'm sure people who love Adult Swim.
It better be.
It better be, or in trouble. It's just you and I are going to listen to this. No, but so what's next?
Okay, so Run It Back was a basketball TV show where we took the NBA on TNT Game of the Week. We cut it down to like an hour, and we filled it with kind of like a mix between pop-up video and
Trivia.
NBA Jam and stuff, where there were like little trivia bubbles and little jokes and special effects, like 3-pointers would explode out of the basket, and we had
I remember one time
spiders and things.
Yeah, I remember one time they turned the players into chicken nuggets. So it was just stupid fun stuff like that.
It was very silly, and it was all it was a kid's show, so it was very, I guess, a strange show for Adult Swim or William Street in particular to produce, but it was for kids.
And it was broadcast on Sunday mornings on Cartoon Network.
8 a.m. Sunday mornings, something just way early.
Way too early.
And what was weird about that show was that we would make it in like 2.5 days.
Yeah.
Because the game would be Thursday night and then would air Sunday morning. And we were delivering, and by we, I mean I, because I was the one in those, net ops rooms where the signal is broadcast from at 4 a.m. on Sunday. Just watching other people ingest tape and make sure they get it right. I made them nervous because I think halfway through the production of that show, I had been going over the tape, sitting with them as they ingested it, which they have to do like real time.
Right.
And just watching it, making sure it all works well. And I guess I was too harsh of a critic because I was not letting I was like, this is my ass. I'm not letting anything go wrong.
Right. So
I'm going, that's that fuzzied there, or that was a drop frame or whatever. This is all wrong. And they would make them redo it. And after a couple of times, I guess, of me doing that, they called our boss, Sean Akins, and told him that I was too
picky.
No, too overbearing.
Well, let me just chime in.
Nervous.
Let me just chime in because this is so funny. Because like my perspective, I'm a video editor, and just to give people an idea, is like a 30-minute show, 22 minutes that you cut, and we had to do it in 5 different rooms, and then
this is an hour.
Oh, was it an hour?
It was an hour.
And then we did it in 5 different rooms, and then people would lay it off. And one guy, Mike Terrell, was over at Adult Swim and editing. And so we're laying the whole thing off Sunday morning at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., whatever. Mm-hmm. And you kind of came in, you had this motorized scooter, and you were like kind of young, and everybody's like, who is this guy? And then all of a sudden you're just kind of hanging out, and you'd be in the back and be like, that's wrong. And we'd be like, and we would be like, who the fuck is this guy? And you'd be like, I'm sorry, that's misspelled, and Sean Akins would just let it go by, or the other producers would see it and let it go by. But eventually it became that everything had to go through Matt, because Matt would catch stuff. And then we heard the stories about you driving the BOC people, because you're allowed a certain amount of mistakes. You can have, like, in an hour-long show, you can have 5 or 6 mistakes, but there'd be one mistake and you'd be like, you got to redo it. But it was absolutely hilarious.
I didn't know.
Yeah, you didn't know, but it wasn't funny to the other editors, because they'd be sitting there like, dude, like, it's a drop frame, like, get over it. We're not going to redo this thing. But man, it was so funny. It was just so funny to be like, sorry, it's TWO, not TOO.
So Aqua Teen and Squids would have been happening at the same time and a little bit after Run It Back was happening, which those were kind of the two, at the time, big shows that we were producing in-house. William Street has its own, basically unique form of producing, especially animated shows. We build like fully developed animatics, like very, very highly detailed animatics. An animatic, if you don't know, is kind of like a moving storyboard. We don't storyboard anything. We go typically. It's written by almost every script for both of those shows is written by just the 2 showrunners. For Aqua Teen Hunger Force, it would have been Matt Malero and Dave Willis, and for Squidbillies, it would have been Dave Willis and Jim Fortier. And other people will come and write episodes from time to time, and eventually, like on Squidbillies, Alan Stedman, who's one of their writers and producers, kind of became like a third person in those rooms as well. But for the majority of those shows' lives, it's just 2 dudes in a room writing.
Right.
And because we don't have those massive writers' rooms that almost every other show has, like Family Guy you're talking about, or The Simpsons, or anything, The Big Bang Theory, Friends, whatever. Those shows are packed with 12 plus writers that just sit and they work it out, and they work on it for months. But these guys don't have the time or the staff or the money to do that. So they will quickly, over the course of a couple weeks, kind of do, one script at a time. They'll do a script for every few weeks, and then they'll immediately start recording it. And they'll get VO, and then they'll send that VO over to an editor. And that editor kind of becomes in charge of that particular episode for the most part.
Okay.
So they'll cut radio plays, and I guess my understanding is that there is an editor on Squidbillies who does almost all the radio plays, and then they send the radio play off to another editor. I don't remember if Aqua Teen did the same thing or not. It's but you cut the radio play out of the audio, which a radio play is just kind of what it sounds like, a audio only version of the episode.
Right.
And then they start the extremely detailed process of building an animatic. If you've ever seen Space Ghost Coast to Coast or 12 Ounce Mouse, which are 2 other William Street shows, those are virtually animatics. There's animation that happens in them sometimes, but those are like 10% more involved than what those editors will do on Aqua Teen and on Squidbillies. They will the level of work that they have to do on those things is so intense and so detailed, because they don't have a lot of time for animation, and they don't have a lot of time. They don't storyboard at all. They don't, unless it's like a very particular specific sequence, and it's very rare when that happens. They don't do what all these other animated shows do, where a lot of the writing is done Like on Adventure Time, they were always talking about how a lot of the writing was done in the storyboarding process.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a storyboarding process. So it's the edit room. Instead of a writer's room, we have an edit bay. And it spends, at times, months in edit.
Let's talk about YPF.
So YPF is short for Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell. It's a live-action horror comedy series. It's kind of like The Office set in hell.
Right.
I think I started working on it in like 2012.
Mm-hmm.
It's co-created by Dave Willis, who did Aqua Teen Hunger Force and Squidbillies, and Casper Kelly, who did Too Many Cooks and Stroker and Hoop.
So it's still going on.
It's still going on.
Wow.
Yeah. I started working on that as a PA because basically it was like the other show that was happening. There were 2 shows that were in development at that time at William Street. One of them, I won't say what, but there was one show that was kind of the focus, I guess. Most people thought that was going to be the big show, and that like kind of the next Aqua Teen or Squidbillies thing. And a lot of people wanted to work on it, and it was very crowded. And I was the lowest person on the totem pole.
Right.
But there was this other show in development called Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell. And I remember watching both the pilots for that show, and I thought the other show was good, but I liked the pilot for YPF better. So I kind of just thought, well, no one wants to do this, and there's room for me on. Everybody else is doing this other thing, and I can't seem to really get a foothold. I'll do this other thing that I think is funnier, even. And what was interesting was that in the process of developing like the first real episode for both of those shows, that other show got canceled. So I guess the first thing that I was ever like paid to write on would be Carl's Stone Cold Lock of the Century of the Week, which was a web series based on the character Carl from Aqua Teen Hunger Force. And we did that for, I don't know how many, 4 or 5 years, maybe. I had already started working on YPF at the time when Dave Willis, who had done some of these before, but I don't know how regularly he had done them. I didn't really watch them at the time because I just didn't know about them. But he approached me after we had shot the first season of YPF and asked me if I wanted to write on those with him, and I was like, absolutely, of course I do.
Yeah,
that's what I want to do. So it makes perfect sense. I think they were really good for me in particular because they basically just taught me how to write jokes.
Okay.
It's just a minute and a half, no more than 2 minutes. All you can really do, and it's one character, it's one topic, because they were all about Carl from Aqua Teen. They were all about his thoughts on what was happening in the NFL, the National Football League.
Right.
And that was it.
That's funny.
So all you could do was, from Carl, talk about football and typically what had happened that week. Which he's a great character and he's very opinionated.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of weird and funny things that you can make him say.
Right.
But I think it was very good for me because it just kind of, all I could do was sit down and write jokes for it. There was no story. You couldn't tell anything grand. You can't do too much with it. It's a minute and a half and all you can do is be funny as best you can in that short period of time and give it some form of structure.
Yeah.
Like I just need the beginning, a bit of a rise, and a fall towards the end.
Yeah.
Just some sort of punch at the end or something.
Right. And doing it so many times must have really...
Just repetition.
Yeah. I mean, must have made you so much better.
Of course. Because I thought I was writing a lot before. And then I was like, oh, I'm not really writing that much. So YPF, which is Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell. I started out kind of as like a PA on that, and then associate producer and producer eventually. And I started writing, I think second season. In the second season, I sold an idea to them for an episode. That was the first thing that I did.
Nice.
And then the third season, I wrote one script, and then the fourth season, I wrote two. And I'm pretty sure that other than Chris and Dave, I've written more episodes than anyone else of that show.
Nice.
And the way that show works too is that a lot of the stuff, it's very collaborative. Like they're very open and welcome to, like, whoever has the better joke will win. So if you're in like an ADR session, or if you're on set, or if you're in a script read or something, and someone says a better version of this joke you're trying to tell, that goes in. So we have a group of like people that are kind of just designated creative consultants.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically, that's like a half a dozen of us who sit in on the script reads, sit in on the edit reviews, and kind of just give feedback throughout the course of the season. And so we'll contribute to the show just randomly whenever it's needed. I think that's a nice way to do it. It kind of alleviates some of that pressure of having to have it all on the two of them, where if you can just say, Matt had a really good joke for that in the end of that scene, let's just use that joke.
Right.
That'll be fine. It's a bit of a meritocracy, I guess, whoever has the best joke.
Yeah, it's a great way to do it. What kind of advice would you give to people who want to work at Adult Swim, but also who want to be a writer, producer? And it sounds like from your stories that it's not an easy thing to do.
I think that's probably accurate. It's not easy to get to do it, but it is achievable, obviously. I would say one of the best attributes that you can have if you're looking to write and produce anywhere, really, not even just Adult Swim. You need to be willing to outwork everybody.
Yeah, it
That's
sounds like you've had to be pretty tenacious, actually, just to get in the door, but then also work your way up.
It's just like an actor auditioning. Well, you're going to get 100 no's before you kind of get somebody to go, oh, I'll call you back. Maybe we like you. You just have to get used to and not take it personally when someone says, I don't like that. If it's comedy, that doesn't make me laugh. If it's drama, that doesn't interest me. Like, it's not personal.
Right.
It's to them. You may
it's
disagree.
A business, yeah.
You may disagree. You may be like, oh, this is the funniest thing ever. And maybe you're right, but 99% of the time, you're probably not right. You're probably wrong about what you wrote. You're too close to it. You're treating it too preciously. That was, something I learned, like I said, when I was writing on the Carl's Locks. It cannot be personal. It can't be precious. If someone tells you, I don't like that joke, then you just say, okay. You say, okay. And you switch it
and move on.
You change, you move to another joke.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for doing this. And we'll definitely have to talk soon, get together, have a drink. But
yeah. See ya.
Appreciate it, man.
Thanks for listening to the Lights Camera Pro podcast, where entertainment pros talk about how they made their dream into a career.
Go to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and subscribe, rate, and review. Thanks to Bob Juergens for the Rockin' VO and Joseph McDade for the music. Next week, we have a very special guest. It is Eric Carter Landon of the True Consequences podcast. He is out of New Mexico, and he does a true crime podcast. I'm going to talk about it next week. Tune in.